Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video, which is going to be my July reading wrap up. I'm filming this a little bit early. I'm going to be out of town at the very start of August, so I'm just pre-filming some videos. We do have a little bit to go in the month of July, and there's one book I'm currently in the middle of that I feel like I will probably finish this month, but I'm just going to include my thoughts on that book at the beginning of my August wrap up. And then today I'll be telling you about the 5 books that I have already completed in the month of July. So I didn't read as much as I hoped or would have wanted to, but I was feeling a little bit slumpy this month. Some life things got in the way and I just wasn't really up to reading as much as usual, but I would say it was still a pretty decent reading month. I would recommend all the books that I read in July to some extent, some more than others, so we'll get into it. With that, let's hop right into the wrap up. The first book I read in July is This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. I did share all my thoughts on this book in my Doing Book Things video, so if you haven't checked that out, I'll link it above and below if you want to watch it, but I am going to go a little bit more in depth with my thoughts today in this video. So This Summer Will Be Different follows our main character Lucy, and one day she ends up going on vacation. She's meeting her best friend at Prince Edward Island in Canada, and her best friend's flight ends up getting like delayed or canceled, so she's not going to make it until a day later. So Lucy's there by herself. She's kind of just exploring while she's waiting for her friend to arrive. She ends up going to this restaurant there. She hits it off with one of the guys that works at the restaurant who's like shucking oysters. They end up going home together, having a little fling, and then the next morning she realizes that she's at the best friend's house where she vacationed and grew up there, and the guy she just hooked up with is her best friend's brother Felix. So from there it does follow the span of many years. We see Lucy's relationship both with her best friend as well as with her best friend's brother Felix, and then Lucy also is dealing with things in her personal life, like things with her job, things with her family are definitely touched on in this book as well. So this is Carly Fortune's latest release that came out in June, I believe, maybe late May, and I've been hearing really good reviews about it, so I feel like I went in with pretty high expectations. I thought this potentially could be a 5-star for me because Carly Fortune's debut novel was a 5-star. Her second release wasn't a 5-star for me, but I'd heard so many negative reviews that I went in with really low expectations, expecting to honestly kind of hate it, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. I gave that one 3.75 stars. So I think based on how I felt about her previous 2 books and then hearing all the positive reviews for this one, I went in with pretty high expectations, expecting to absolutely love it. I would say I was the slightest bit disappointed by it. I ended up giving it 3.75 stars. It did take me a while to get into. It was very slow going. I think the biggest thing for me from the start was that the way it was written, I really felt like she had more chemistry with the best friend than with the best friend's brother Felix. I really thought there was going to be like a little plot twist in this book where she was going to end up with the best friend instead, which would have been great, but that's not what this book was trying to do at all. So I just wasn't really buying into Lucy and Felix's chemistry. I feel like also in romance books, when the relationship starts off with like a one-night stand, it does just feel very physical for me, and that was very much the case in here. So if there's not really that emotional connection until later, it's hard for me to really connect to characters and connect to them as a couple and root for them and really feel like there's chemistry aside from the physical connection. So that was definitely the case in here. I also feel like my other biggest issue with this book is that normally I think Carly Fortune does timing and pacing so well. All of her books have a past and present timeline, but in this book there were multiple past timelines with different storylines going on, and usually I feel like she throws in what we need to know at the perfect moments. Like I never feel confused at all, but in this book, I don't know, things would be brought up in the present and I'm like, wait, am I supposed to know that happened? I can't remember reading that. Is that going to happen? Did I miss something? So I think just the multiple timelines in the past, and also the fact that they weren't sequential, they kind of were jumping around and told out of order, left me feeling a little bit confused, and I just felt like the timing and pacing of things was slightly off. But those really were my only critiques of the book. Aside from that, I did think it was enjoyable overall. I love Carly Fortune's writing style so much. She really writes such a deep, heartfelt, and emotional romance, and by the end I was like, okay, I feel like the emotional connection between this couple has kicked in. I am rooting for them. I do care about the characters, and I really felt like I went on a journey with both of them. At the beginning, I kind of felt like the characters weren't very memorable or distinct, but by the end, like I said, I just felt like I had lived their life struggles along with them. So I did really feel a connection by the end, but it just took a while to get there. I also really loved the setting of this book. Like I said, it takes place at Prince Edward Island in Canada, which is the same setting as Anne of Green Gables. Had no idea, but it made me not only want to pick up that book, but also visit this island, just the way it was written. I was literally searching up how much flights to get there are because it was just so like beachy, perfect for summer. And overall, I did really like the story and thought it had so much depth and heart to it. Then I ended up listening to Lucy Foley's latest release on audio, Midnight Feast. I feel like people have very mixed opinions on Lucy Foley and her books. I tend to like all of them generally, I would say. My favorite is definitely The Guest List by her. That book was almost a 5-star for me. I think I rated it like 4.5, 4.75 stars. Her other books I haven't rated as highly, but I still have enjoyed them. So she's an author that I will read everything from. This one sounded really intriguing to me. It sounded very good for summer. It was giving me like the midsummer vibes. Basically in this book we're following Francesca, and Francesca is opening this like bougie retreat type place in this very remote location, and it's called The Manor. And the locals of this town are very unhappy with this. They don't want these like rich people taking over their land because the land has a lot of like history to it, especially in these woods. There's some very like mysterious things. It's kind of questionable like what goes on in the woods here, and they're just kind of annoyed that these very like out of touch rich celebrity type people are coming and just enjoying their time at this manor without really appreciating the land. It's kind of hard to like tell you more about the storyline. I feel like you should go in knowing very little, but I thought this one was okay. I think it's probably my least favorite of all of her books so far. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't dislike it at all, but I didn't really love it either. I feel like it's not super memorable because even now I'm having trouble recalling like what went down in this book and some of the details and things about the characters. There was one character in particular who I really liked. Definitely a lot of unlikable characters as well. This book also took place in multiple timelines with different storylines going on, and there was one timeline in the past that was told through journal entries, which I found really fascinating, and I enjoyed that part of the story probably the most, and kind of like the backstory it gave on some of the characters. But I don't know, I just wasn't super invested, so when the ending came there wasn't really that shock factor for me. I feel like Lucy Foley's reveals and endings usually pack a punch, but this one I was just kind of like, oh okay, like I just didn't really care, but I didn't really not care either. I feel very middle of the road. I think this would work more for some people, but probably not for a lot of people. I feel like I've seen more negative reviews on this one than positive reviews, but it was a really cool setting. There were really cool vibes to it. It definitely did have that kind of like midsummer vibe and some very interesting characters, but just not super memorable. I don't have a ton of thoughts on it one way or the other. And then I read Play Along by Liz Tomford. This is the 4th book in the Windy City series. I have absolutely been obsessed with all the books in this series. I will say Play Along was probably the book that I was the least excited for. So going into it, I don't want to say I had low expectations because I knew I would probably enjoy it overall, but I just wasn't really like anticipating this book very highly. I was just excited for more in this series, if that makes sense. But book 4, it is following Isaiah Rhodes. He is the brother of our main character from book 3, Kai Rhodes. So he is a professional baseball player. It is a baseball romance, and he has had a crush on the athletic trainer for the team named Kennedy for years, but for the longest time he's thought that she was engaged to another man. So he's kind of admired her from afar because he thought he had no shot, but recently Kennedy has become available, so he's kind of shooting his shot. They both end up in Vegas at the same time, and they drunkenly get married in Vegas, and so it becomes like a marriage of convenience story. I liked this one. I do think it might be my least favorite of the series so far though. I gave it 3.75 stars. I feel like one thing in Liz Tomford's books is the way she sets up the story. The little meet cute between our main characters is always amazing and gets me so giddy and excited. And then from there, I feel like the storyline can go one of 2 ways. Either I'm invested in the characters, so I end up loving it the whole way through, or I'm not super invested in either one or the other characters, so some of the storyline falls flat for me. I think that was the case in this book. I really loved Isaiah. He wasn't what I was expecting at all. What we saw of him in book 3, he was very much like a bad boy, playboy kind of character that never took anything seriously. I think that was another reason I wasn't super excited for this book necessarily, because I tend to not like a male main character that's like that. But he ended up not being how I thought he was going to be at all. I thought he was such a sweetie. I honestly loved him so much, but I didn't really love our female main character as much. I kind of feel like Isaiah needed someone to match his freak, and I don't think Kennedy was that person. I just feel like the relationship relationship was a bit one-sided at times, and you definitely get backstory that makes you empathetic towards the characters and you understand why things are the way they are at points. But I don't know, it got to the point where I was like, Kennedy, girl, just like throw him a bone or something. Like, he's so sweet and he's doing everything, and I love the boy obsessed trope, but I don't know, Kennedy's character did frustrate me at times and I didn't absolutely love her. So I think maybe that kind of affected my enjoyment of the book overall, and it kind of made me not root for them as much. The chemistry didn't feel all the way there for me. I kind of just felt like something was missing, and I do feel like it was more with Kennedy's character. So even like the spice in this book just wasn't really hitting for me. But I also think I'm just not like a baseball person. I'm such a big sports romance person because I love watching sports, but baseball is the one sport that I really don't watch and I'm not familiar with at all. So part of that could just be like personal preference thing, why I didn't enjoy this book as much as the others. But I feel like I'm coming across as super negative and like I didn't like it. It still was so enjoyable. Liz Tomford's writing is so bingeable, so easy to read. I read this book in like 2 sittings, so I would recommend it. I would recommend this entire series. And up next is Rio's book. I cannot wait. I'm so very excited. So definitely have my critiques of this one. I think it was probably my least favorite so far, but I have heard other people saying that this is their favorite of the series. So I definitely think it's personal preference for me. My favorites of the series are definitely Mile High book 1 and The Right Move book 2, which I would say is probably the fan favorite of the series. So would recommend the series overall. This book just personally wasn't my favorite. Then I listened to Burn for Burn by Jenny Han on audio. Jenny Han is one of my favorite authors. She wrote the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy and the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy. Both of those series I have loved. They're 2 of my very favorite series that I've given 5 stars to. So Burn for Burn is the start to one of her backlist trilogies. It's the last one I have to read, and I just love her writing so much. I feel like sometimes YA doesn't hit for me, and I feel like sometimes you can tell the author is like so far removed from that time in their lives, but I never feel that way with the Jenny Han book. I feel like she writes high school characters so well, and they feel so relatable to a point where I'm like, yeah, that's not my life now, but I remember when that was my life, and so I connect to it because it feels so nostalgic to me. Basically, in this book, we are getting the perspectives of 3 girls that all go to the same high school, Mary, Lilia, and Kat, and they all kind of end up together, like same place, same time, for different reasons, under different circumstances, but they all have 3 different people that they want to get revenge on that have wronged them at this school. So they're all kind of working together to enact their revenge plot. And I liked this one. I gave it 3.75 stars. Definitely, like I said, brought back some of those nostalgic feelings from high school, like when you like boys and being part of a friend group and homecoming and football games. It was just very nostalgic in a good way. It brought back so many good memories for me. I kind of thought this would be a good one to pick up during the summer because when I read it, their school is set on kind of like an island. It's called Jar Island, and you have to take a ferry to get to and from the island. But I do think it would be better for the fall time because, like I mentioned, we're seeing like high school things, football games, school dances. It felt very perfect for that time of year, so I probably will continue the rest of the trilogy later on in a few months. I will say this book kind of took me by surprise just with some of the things that it touched on. It got a little heavy at some point, so I would look up trigger warnings because some things that happened in this book kind of surprised me. She kind of went places that she hasn't gone in her previous books, and there was one thing in particular that happened that I was kind of like, okay, that got brushed over way too quickly. I'm gonna need more details on the aftermath of that, so I'm hoping that future books touch on that. So it was a little heavier than expected, and the ending kind of took a turn that I was not expecting at all. It definitely kept my interest and it kept me intrigued. It kind of had like a cliffhanger ending that made me really want to jump into book 2, but like I said, I'll probably save it for closer to the fall time. Not my very favorite. I feel like I'm gonna have to read the whole trilogy to determine whether or not I feel like I would recommend it, but it did give those nostalgic high school vibes that I enjoyed. And the last book I read is Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. This is a YA romance graphic novel, and in this book we're following Nick and Charlie. They both go to this all-boys school. Charlie is openly gay and he's been kind of like bullied, but things have gotten a lot better for him, and now he's kind of like like one of the popular kids. Nick is very different from Charlie. He's more like into sports, very athletic. He is on the rugby team, and he and Charlie end up being in the same class. They sit next to each other and they form a friendship. And this one is like short and it's a start to a series, so I feel like it really is just setting things up, so I don't want to give away too much more than that. But basically we're following Nick and Charlie's friendship and them exploring their feelings for each other and it turning into maybe something a little more. And I really love this one. I gave it 4 stars. I've heard the best things about this series for the longest time. I wasn't sure how I would feel about it because it's a graphic novel, which I've never read a graphic novel before, but everything people say about it is so true. It was just so cute. The whole time I was reading it, I was just like smiling ear to ear. It was so cute. It definitely took a little bit to get used to the writing style because, like I said, I've never read a graphic novel. So I guess not writing style, but how to read it, because you kind of have to like read the pictures. So it took me a second to figure things out, but once I was in it, I was so invested and obsessed. Charlie and Nick's chemistry, like I was rooting for them. So cute. I loved it. This was exactly what I needed. I feel like I read it at the perfect time. I was feeling slumpy. I needed to pick me up. This did just that. I think it took me less than an hour to read it. Very easy to read and fly through and binge, and I cannot wait to continue on with the series. Once I finish this book, I immediately purchased book 2. So just waiting for it to arrive. I cannot wait. I feel like this series is going to be one of my new favorite things ever. So that's going to conclude my July reading wrap up. Super short and sweet, but I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if you're not already. Let me know what y'all read in July, what you liked, what you didn't like, absolutely anything you want to tell me about your reading month. Let me know if you read any of the books that I read in July and what your thoughts are on them so we can chat in the comments. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will see you so soon in the next one. Bye guys.